Cheat shells, cheat shells,
Cheat shells. Cheat shells, chai to cheat chore.
Shore cheaters.
Cheater, chiker.
Check the check of checkers.
Checkers.
That's not.
but purposefully misread.
Yes. I don't know. How are we going to introduce these episodes without talking about the weather? Like, there's nothing to complain about right now. It's quite amazing.
We can talk about how nice it was.
Because it
nice.
has been nice.
Quite
Like,
lovely.
Finally.
Like, I don't know why, but I've just been feeling these nice weather days have made me feel like super nostalgic. Because it's been years since I've had nothing to do on a nice spring day like this.
Yep.
Or it's just like, man, I feel like a kid for some reason. I have a little more money than I did then, but
What
not
you
as
gonna
much
use
as I
it
would
on
like.
nowadays?
Well, can't really go anywhere to spend it now, can I?
No.
I can buy gas
Gas is cheap
for
boy.
the car that I'm not likely to drive very far anytime soon. But it does need gas.
Having car issues, are you?
Beyond refueling and the chip in my windshield after 2 years turning into a full-blown crack.
As they do. When you first got that chip, you were talking to me about, I should get that fixed or get that looked at, or
Yep.
and then you slowly didn't do that.
Or
you did?
I bought a kit that you're supposed to inject like this epoxy stuff into the chip, but the thing is that there's like this thin film covering the glass, and the crack was inside of that film, so I couldn't get the epoxy in there.
And you didn't take it to a
No,
place
because
to
at
get it
that
done,
point I had
'cause
switched states, and my new car insurance didn't cover it.
Uh-huh.
So I should have listened to my dad, who said that I needed to get that fixed because my old insurance did cover it, but I was lazy. So
That's what you get.
you reap the whirlwind, as it were.
You reap the crack.
The whirlwind.
As it whirl.
The inner whirl. Whorl is a weird word, like WHORL.
Whorl.
What is its definition?
In the context I am used to it in is that it's like a portion of like a grass plant's like anatomy. So it's like an inner whorl of a leaf on a grass plant.
So, if a spider takes up residence inside of a plant, does it make a whirlwide web?
It makes it into a whorl house, that's for sure.
Yes, of course it does.
Whorl house. In the middle of whorl house. Whorl house. That's what the spider will sing. I love to sing about the moon and the June and the spring.
And the tuna. I could never remember what came after the Muna and the Juna. So I'm like, what's a word that rhymes with a Juna? Muna and a Juna?
And the tuna.
Tuna.
But it didn't do that.
So now every time I say the Muna and the Juna and the tuna.
Not to attempt to age my mom or anything, but we got a DVD full of old Looney Tunes cartoons like that for Christmas one year. And that one was on it with like the owls. It's like that one I believe came out in like the 1930s. No.
But could you fool them?
I mean, Simon Cowell wasn't involved.
Mm-hmm. No deceitful badgers.
No. Or beavers.
Beavers.
Yeah.
It's right.
He's
right.
the king of the beavers was not yet involved. But at any rate, yeah, there was the old Looney Tunes. I think it was Merry Melodies is what they called it then. It's a cartoon of these owls. The dad owl is like a stodgy old, very formal, rigid music person, and this little boy
He's
owl.
a rigid trad.
Yeah, the little boy owl is like really into jazz, and he just wants to jazz out. So that's where the little tune came from. And then we're sitting there watching this in the living room. My mom's like, oh my gosh, I remember watching this when I was a kid. It's like, wow, Mom.
I mean, Looney Tunes have been on reruns forever for one thing.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
they are fairly intergenerational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I feel like this cartoon in particular came out in like the 1930s or 40s. So, predating both of my parents. But yeah, it's a fun little.
That is a little bit strange that it dated both of your parents.
Actually, the only people who ever dated my parents were my parents. It was one time.
That's the way to do it.
I can't picture your dad and your dad.
No. No.
Oh.
Anyway. Let's see. There was another train of thought I had there. Another little bit in that cartoon that was kind of funny was that there was like this sort of amateur hour thing going on where like anybody could like go into the local radio station and like audition themselves basically. And so like if they weren't popular, that's like the radio or if the person wasn't very good, the radio station operator would just like flip a lever and they go down a trapdoor and disappear into the darkness.
Pull the lever, crunk.
Run, lever! Pull the lever, crunk.
Why do we even have that lever?
Yzma.
Why do we even have that lever?
Yes, it doesn't work very well.
Pull the lever, Mr. Kronk.
Pull the lever, Gronk.
We were over dinner tonight. We were doing we were trying to swap out Thanos lines if they were spoken by Bane.
Bane from specifically Tom Hardy's portrayal.
Tom Hardy's
from,
Bane, yeah.
Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises.
Yep.
Not the one from Batman and Robin.
No.
He didn't say much. Have you seen Batman and Robin?
I don't intend to.
Really?
Nor from the
it is very dumb, and I enjoy it for being dumb.
That's George Clooney.
It's
as
the George
Batman,
Clooney
yeah.
Batman, yes. The one with Poison Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Batman with Poison
Arnold
Ivy
Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. And it's kind of fantastically awful.
Does Batman know that there's like a special oil you can get for that?
Oh, really?
He probably has it in his belt.
Probably.
It's like a salve.
Yeah.
I don't know how true this is, but I've heard that some people are more allergic to poison ivy than others. Like,
Yeah?
Yeah.
because I don't think
'Cause
I've been in poison ivy before, but I've never gotten a rash from it.
All poison ivy is an allergic reaction.
To the oil on
To
the
the-
leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like some
common allergy, but like not
some of
everyone
my
has it.
family members are allergic to it and others aren't. I've never gotten an itch from it that I'm aware of. And I've been through we lived in the woods, so I was in poison ivy all the time, whether I knew it or not.
I just had this image of your like house like in the dead center of the woods surrounded by
It's like
forest.
just a
we
forest
had
of
to walk
poison
through
ivy.
poison ivy to get to my front door.
You're lucky to have a front door.
We used to live in a lake.
You are lucky to have a lake.
There were 150 of us living in shoebox in the middle of Rome.
We got evicted from our hole in the ground.
Had to go and live in a lake.
But
We
yeah.
used to live in a paper bag in a septic tank. That one sounds like the worst to me.
Yeah.
A paper bag in a septic tank.
Yeah.
Because that paper bag wasn't going to last long.
Even worse than Eric Idle's bit at the end, where the mom and dad would slice into them with bread knife.
Oh, yeah. Must have taken some effort because bread knives aren't typically that sharp.
Woke up at 10 o'clock at night, half an hour before they went to bed. Drank a cup of sulfuric acid. Worked 24-hour day down at the mill, unpaid. And when they got home, their mom and dad would kill them and dance about on their graves singing Hallelujah.
This is a Monty Python bit for those who are unfamiliar that we're referencing. But I feel like it's one of the more popular ones. You might have heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
4 Yorkshiremen.
It's fun. Sean Bean is from Yorkshire. I was watching this interview where they asked him, like, hey, could you, like, dial up your Yorkshire accent for us? And he's like, yeah, well, I've been trying to dumb it down so you guys can understand what I'm saying. But then, like, he went off and, like, just how he did what he did that day. and it was almost impossible to understand a word he was saying. Like you picked up words here and there, but it wasn't very easy to string together.
Funny.
But yeah.
But what if?
But what if?
But what
I would have
if?
purchased fast food and disguised it as my own cookie.
What if Spinge Bill was not kill?
Oh, ho, ho, ho. Delightfully delightfulish, Mr. Krabs.
What we might need to do eventually is like have a running tally of the number of Steamed Hams references that we leave on this podcast.
We might. That would entail going back and listening to all the other episodes and figuring out how many Steamed Hams references there were.
True.
It might be worth
That
it.
made
if we
the
did
final
like
cut too. I don't edit these episodes very much, but occasionally I do.
Occasionally. Just a little bit. We should ideally get more editing in the future at some
We get
point,
a little
because we'll have transitions and
yep.
things. And speaking of transitions, is now a good time to go into the main episode?
I mean, we could be a little more artful
or are
about
we
it.
going to continue to banter? I don't know.
I mean, it's not a question of should we transition now. It's a question of how do we transition. But
Oh, I had a transition all lined up.
oh,
It was
That
called
was-
Speaking
that
of
was it.
Transition.
all right. Speaking of transitions, we are the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
Today we're talking about the movie Logan.
Yes, that is the topic we're covering.
Indeed.
So, for starters, as some of you may or may not know, the movie Logan is actually an X-Men spin-off movie, primarily about Logan, who is the Wolverine, as he gets older and has to deal with stuff.
Played by Hugh Jackman.
Played by Hugh Jackman, who you may know from such movies as X-Men. And Greatest Showman. What percentage of our
We don't speak of that
listenership is
movie.
women?
40% for the last 2 weeks.
Okay, for their sake, we'll speak
for those
of that movie.
40%. He's the guy from Greatest Showman.
For their
Anyway.
sake, we'll speak of that movie, I guess.
Anyway,
I'll allow it.
so a little background on X-Men. The whole premise of X-Men is that they're in the vaguely distant future, but also kind of the present, and also the past. Anyway, the thing is, mutants are like the next step in human evolution. They're just people with superpowers. And Charles Xavier is a bald guy who in a wheelchair who starts a school specifically for teaching mutants how to deal with their powers and enter society. Also, worth noting is he's the world's most powerful telepath. So he's like psychic. He can read people's minds. And then the people who graduate from his school and want to help stop all the racist humans that are trying to wipe out mutants, and all the racist mutants that are trying to wipe out humans, the people that fight against the bad guys and racists, those are the X-Men. But they're the stars of other movies.
Yeah.
The one we're focusing on, because he's the main character of Logan and probably the best character to come from the X-Men movies, is
By far.
is Wolverine. And his thing is he's got his powers are he's got claws that come out of his knuckles. He's got he heals really quickly, and he's got heightened like tracker senses. And his thing is, in like the 80s or something, he was part of an experiment.
Back in the 80s.
He was part of like a government experiment that was testing mutants and stuff. And as part of that, he got a virtually unbreakable metal called adamantium. It's a fictional metal, grafted to his entire skeleton.
Yep.
And so you've got Wolverine, who's this virtually indestructible, practically immortal killing machine.
He's what at this point, like 200 years old or something.
Something like that. He's
Just
been
'cause
around
his
since the
healing
Civil
factor
War.
keeps him from aging. Until now.
Pretty much. Anyway, so he is off doing his thing when he gets recruited by the X-Men, and that's how he meets up with people. That's kind of what goes on in the earlier X-Men movies. But now we've gotten to the point at the beginning of Logan, where this is the middle distant future of 2027.
29, something
29, somewhere in that range.
something like that.
And this is like after mutants have stopped being born and have kind of faded into obscurity. All of the X-Men have died, and all that's left is Wolverine with Professor Xavier just like chilling out in Mexico because Xavier is getting really old and he's become prone to strokes. And when you are the most powerful mutant brain, having a stroke is very dangerous for like everybody. And so he's got him contained in like a water tower to help block psychic waves or whatever. And Wolverine's just down there being an Uber driver as to get some income to pay for the drugs to keep Professor Xavier from being able to use his powers and hurt people. He's also living there with another mutant named Caliban, and his mutant powers is finding other people with mutant powers. So that's cool. So they're living this kind of dysfunctional life, but they're making it work kind of somehow. When Wolverine is approached by a woman who's like, "Hey, you're the Wolverine. I need you to take me to Canada with my little girl." And he's like,
In
"No."
North Dakota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an
We'll
important
get to
point.
that. We'll get to that.
Anyway, and he's like, "No." She asks again, and he's like, "No." She shows up dead later, and he's still like, "No." The girl shows up in his car, and he's like, "No."
Yeah.
Anyway, then the evil government guys who are chasing the woman and the girl.
Kind of like laboratory weirdo. Yeah.
Yeah, the government guys. they're,
Yeah.
they show up and that they kick off this whole basically movie long car chase across America from with Wolverine, Laura, the little girl, who eventually turns out to be the experiment that the government people were doing is basically creating their own mutants using existing mutants' DNA and quote-unquote volunteer women to grow them in.
Yeah.
And Laura is the DNA daughter of Wolverine, basically. She's got claws. They've grafted metal to her skin. She heals, that whole thing.
She's got a foot claw, too.
She got foot claw, too, just to be different.
Yep.
Anyway, so...
To her skeleton, not her skin. But yeah. That would be a lot different.
Yeah, it would be. Anyway, so Logan, Laura, and Charles Xavier make their way up to Canada being chased by these government guys. That's the whole premise of the movie, more or less.
Yeah.
Charles Xavier dies halfway through at the hands of an evil clone of Wolverine, because that's the thing the government guys have. And then at the border, as the kids are crossing, they get ambushed one more time. But Wolverine saves them and in exchange for his own life, because... I guess another important thing to say is, Wolverine is not only old, but he's also a lot weaker now. He's losing control of his healing powers and his claw powers and stuff. He's kind of he's even losing his senses to some degree. He needs to wear glasses now.
Yeah.
And it's implied that this is primarily due to the metal in his bones, in his body, poisoning him over the last half a decade.
Oof, ouch, my bones.
Bone hurting.
Bone hurting metal.
The bone hurting metal.
Anyway,
No, Logan.
so yeah, at the end of the movie, he dies, and the new kids go on to wherever in Canada the mutants are gathering to stay safe.
They're safe because they're getting sanctuary in Canada or something.
Once they cross into Canada, we can't touch them.
Because plot device. And also, they're all dead. Anyway.
Yes. But
So
they made a really big deal about not letting them get to Canada. This is like, they just immediately are out of their jurisdiction, I guess.
Maybe in this version of 2027, like...
Canada's just
like
a giant military superpower.
Eh? Well, we can't let you do that, eh? Gotta stay on your side of the wall there.
Sorry, you gotta stay on the other side there, man.
We'd give you some Tim Hortons, but, it's too good. Can't have it. All right, no, I'm doing like the sort of Minnesota accent. Like, Canadian's a little softer.
Depends.
Depends on which kind of Canadian accent you're talking about.
About.
Anyway. But yeah.
So that's the overall general premise. We'll get into details here and there when we start the actual analysis.
Yep.
So one of the things that strikes me about the movie is it's kind of a lot about Wolverine's, how he deals with violence and his past. He's got metal claws in his hands. What else is he gonna do, right?
Yeah.
He's the best there is at what he does, and what he does is kind of messy. And this movie is rated R, unlike all the other X-Men films.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot grittier, it's a lot darker, there's a lot more swearing and stuff. It's just a lot more grounded and gritty.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the most like visceral Wolverine's fighting has ever been, right? So you can really kind of see how just kind of what Wolverine has done, like in more detail than normal. And it's like a lot. I feel like one of the main things about the movie is Wolverine dealing with all the killing that he's done, all the violence he's done, because and all the people he has inadvertently hurt by being so violent around them, right?
Yeah.
Because, for context, in the earlier X-Men films, the Jean Grey becomes the Dark Phoenix in one of the movies, and she's out of control. And so Wolverine takes it upon himself to stop her by killing her, and that sticks with him. So a lot of the movie is really Wolverine kind of dealing with and justifying or trying to come to terms with his own past violence, right? And that's something he sees in Laura, right? Where she is pretty much born with the sins of her father in a way. And that's something you see directly with his conflict with X-24, the evil Wolverine, right? The final conflict is he doesn't fight the government guy that's been chasing them or the Weapon X guy that created him. No, he fights himself.
Which is he's sort of dumbed down like a clone that's really only his basest like strengths and like brutality. He doesn't really have a whole lot of intelligence.
It's Wolverine at his most violent and blindly angry.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the thing he kind of has to deal with and overcome in a way. And he has to, I feel like one of the biggest things is learning to come to terms with it and kind of forgive himself, right? Throughout the whole movie, he's kind of dismissive of Laura, of X-23, right? He doesn't think, because I feel like she kind of represents Wolverine's potential for good or to change or amend his ways, which he can't accept right now. He's not in a place mentally or spiritually where he can accept redemption.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, they bring up, in this movie, apparently, comic books idolizing and making heroes out of the X-Men exist in this universe. And he is he rejects that image of him. He rejects the heroism because he feels and focuses on the darkness of what he's done, right? He doesn't see what good has come from anything he's done. He treats it as a fairy tale, as a myth. He's very much a war veteran who's come home shell-shocked and very disillusioned with everything and everybody.
Yep.
So that's one of the big themes of the film, I feel like.
Yeah, and then over the course of the movie, you sort of see him start to change in that he's sort of Laura, being her dad's daughter, has some of those instincts where like she just wants to sort of use her powers to just kind of do what she wants sometimes, and he kind of like reins her in every once in a while, like at the gas station where she's just kind of grabbing things without paying for it. He's like, nope, no, we don't do things this way. So he like sort of just like what's the word I'm looking for, but like in spite of himself, he sort of starts fathering her in a way, like trying to teach her to be better,
which is a kind of another common character trait of Wolverine. He is in past movies and such, he plays a very big brotherly role to Rogue in the first X-Men movie, to Kitty Pryde in the early comics, to Jubilee in the 90s cartoon. He's kind of been this big brother figure for a number of younger female X-Men characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of a progression of that role in a way.
Sure.
Because despite his grisly nature, he does have heart. He does have an emotional core. He is just very hesitant to reveal that to anybody, because anybody he reveals it to gets killed or very, very much hurt.
He has like a very tough outer shell that he hides it in.
Yeah. He has a tough exoskeleton for a guy with the endoskeleton of steel.
Yeah. And then another thing too is somebody who's sort of acting as his conscience through the movie is Charles Xavier.
And he's kind of always been his conscience.
Yeah.
And he is a very nurturing, grandfatherly, teacherly sort of character in general, just because he was the teacher at the X-Men school and such.
We
But
learn.
There's also kind of something that Wolverine is keeping from him, right?
Yeah.
Because I mentioned he's prone to seizures. Well, it's implied in the film that one of those seizures is why the X-Men aren't around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Charles killed them, essentially. And Wolverine is keeping him on the pills that keep his powers
Dampened.
diminished, and isn't kind of telling him the whole truth about what happened. And it's implied that he kind of just doesn't know.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like Wolverine might be trying to save him from being Wolverine in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's at the in the last moments we see Charles alive, right? He is kind of confessing that he's becoming aware of that it was him that killed the X-Men inadvertently, but he's more at peace with putting it behind him and moving on. And
Yeah, because he's lived a long life.
Right. There was a point I was going to make with that. It dropped out of my brain.
Well, there's the whole thing where Logan had been trying to save up money so they could buy like a boat that they can live on, you know. So,
but I feel like that boat is almost a hopeless venture.
Mm-hmm.
Wolverine's only going out to sea so that he can just kind of exist for the rest of his life until Charles dies.
Yeah.
And until he dies. He's just waiting to die, but without a purpose, really.
Mm-hmm.
Right? At the end of the film, he dies with a purpose.
Yeah.
He dies defending Laura and the kids, but throughout the movie, he's carrying on him an adamantium bullet that is a remnant from the bad one we don't talk about, I believe. X-Men Origins Wolverine. I think there's an adamantium bullet involved in that movie, and that's where he's keeping it from, or where he got it. Anyway,
Something like that.
But like, he kind of carries that around because he feels like there's no other way out.
Yeah.
He feels he's only going to stick around as long as Charles does, and when Charles is gone, what else is there for Wolverine to do?
Mm-hmm. There's also like the whole facet of the film in that it's sort of written in the form of like a Western or
It's
like
very-
a
very-
post-Western Western.
It's kind of a very much in the vein of the Cowboys or Shane or something along those lines.
Like they even play a little clip of them watching Shane in a hotel room because it's like, you know, the whole point of that is like a gunman can't really change who he is. He's got to
Right. The line I believe is that there's no living with the killing. It's a brand that sticks.
Yeah.
Right, and it's stuck with Wolverine for 2 centuries.
But what Shane did and what Wolverine ends up doing is that he uses that part of him for good.
Right.
So like Shane clears out the gunmen that are kind of holding all the settlers in that valley hostage with, you know, extorting them. And
Which-
Logan does a similar thing in helping the children achieve freedom.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of the movie, right as he's dying, the last thing he really says to Laura is, "Don't be what they made you."
Mm-hmm.
He it's in his final like moments, he realizes that, due to his sacrifice, partially, that she doesn't have to live the life he lived. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There is repentance. You don't have to be the way your nature is.
Because like before, like the night before, they were sort of having like this little argument, and he was telling her about how
people he care about end up
like,
killed, hurt.
And that and then like talking about like they've killed people like
right. Wolverine woke up from a nightmare, and she's like, I have nightmares too. In my nightmares, people hurt me. And Wolverine's like, well, in my nightmares, I hurt people.
mm-hmm.
And she's like, I only hurt bad people. And he's like, there's no difference.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's kind of another interesting thing too.
Yeah, kind of really in a really real way, kind of discussing the nature of violence and is it justifiable, or when is it justified? Can you come back from it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's kind of like the primary through line. There's other little notes about Wolverine and family, the family he's built with Xavier and Caliban. As dysfunctional as it is, it's a family.
mm-hmm.
The eventual bond he builds with Laura, and the one night they spend with the farming family.
Yeah.
And Charles Xavier is like, this is what a real family feels like, and I wish you could slow down and enjoy it for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, if you remember, right before Wolverine actually gives up the ghost at the end, he whispers, so this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
That could be taken, so this is what it feels like to die. You've been alive for 200 years. But also it could be he was with his family. This is what it feels like. This sacrifice is what it feels like to be a family.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's that element to it also.
Yeah. And also like in the previous, like the only other Wolverine solo film, as it were. Like
The only other one.
called The Wolverine. There's sort of this moment in that scene, it was like the same director and everything.
Yes, it was.
Where there was like this sort of clairvoyance mutant he was talking to.
Her whole gig is being able to see the future, but only specifically when people die.
Yeah.
And I believe she makes some prediction for Wolverine where she's like, I see you lying on your back. There's blood everywhere, and you're holding your heart in your hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's in the film. It's made to build tension for the moment where he realizes there's a spider robot thing in his body keeping his healing ability down.
Mm-hmm.
So he digs a hole in his chest and rips it out.
Yeah.
He doesn't rip out his heart. That was just building tension for that moment. But it is, that prediction lines up with what happens at the end of Logan, where he is holding Laura's hand as he's been impaled by a giant tree.
Yeah. So like his daughter is like his heart, sort
Yes.
of metaphorically, yeah.
So yeah, that there's some really cool context you can pick up from the other films if you have seen them. But also I feel like Logan is really self-contained as a story, so as long as you have a cursory knowledge of mutants and Wolverine and Professor Xavier, you should be fine.
It's easy enough to enjoy on its own.
I mean, for instance, there was at the beginning of the movie, there was Charles talking about they're waiting for you at the Statue of Liberty, which was partly a reference to the first X-Men film. And Wolverine's like, the Statue of Liberty is a long time ago, Chuck.
Yeah.
But then there was a motel with the Statue of Liberty on it that the lady
nurse,
and Laura were
Yeah.
staying at. So it was actually him communicating with Laura, even though he was on drugs and in the dome because the dosage was too low and stuff or whatever. Anyway.
It's also good because he wasn't taking them.
There's also that, hence a couple of seizures that happened in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Should we talk about North Dakota a little bit?
We should talk about North Dakota.
So, those of you who have seen the film, Just to clarify, there are no mountains whatsoever in North Dakota. Whatever you see in the movie, it looks nothing like anywhere in North Dakota at all.
Right, because they're going up to Canada, and the
They're
road
on the
they
border.
take allegedly takes them through North Dakota.
Yeah.
Which I looked up the GPS coordinates.
It's on the Canadian border in North Dakota, but it's in the middle of a field. Like it's very flat. So don't, as like one Redditor I think said, like, don't. I looked it up. I thought I'd save you guys like a long car ride for nothing. There's nothing up here. If you wanted to try to see it, it's a fictionalized. I don't really understand it. I mean, it's more dramatic and cool looking,
And
I guess.
more westerny.
But why didn't they just go to Montana? Like that, it looked like Montana. Must have been where they shot it.
Well, maybe in the future,
North Dakota.
in
the next
Montana.
in the next 6 years, there'll be a mountain.
North Dakota annexed Montana.
There you go.
That still doesn't solve it.
They
'Cause
annexed Montana in the Canadian War.
Yeah.
where Canada's a global superpower now.
Yeah, North Dakota is now a super state that stretches.
I mean, if we seceded from the Union, we'd have like the third most nukes in the world.
yeah, we could annex whatever territory
We
we
could do
want.
it.
I mean, in this version of 2027, Oklahoma City was it? Or
Yeah.
that is basically now Vegas. So
Yeah. Those sorts of things kind of puzzle me a little bit. It's like
like-
the one time North Dakota gets, and like, I'm not like a native North Dakotan per se, but like, it's like, man, if you're going to bother, it's kind of like Fargo. It had nothing to do with Fargo. Like that movie. I mean, it sort of did, but they filmed it in completely different places. Like, why, if you're going to try to make it about that place, why don't you film it there? But at any rate, it would have been kind of boring to have them running through like an open field. Admittedly, it would have taken a lot of drama out of it.
also, interesting fact: Wolverine is originally from Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and so like he kind of began in Canada, he ends in Canada. I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
it's
that's
a
kind
neat
of
little
neat.
bookend.
I didn't think of that.
No, he's from Australia. Oh, wait, that's
Huge Ackman.
just huge. Ackman.
Yeah.
Stop looking at my nose.
It's funny for as great. Hugh Jackman plays the perfect Wolverine almost.
Yes.
The one problem is he isn't 5'2". Wolverine in the comics, he's a short stack.
But I feel like it
It doesn't make a difference for the sake of a movie.
more imposing that Hugh Jackman is the way Hugh Jackman is. But
Wolverine's not supposed to be imposing.
you don't really have a concept of height really when you see him on screen. I
A
feel like
Wolverine's a small creature, though.
true.
And
It's kind of like a badger-sized critter.
like in the comics, people are constantly calling him Shrimp or the Runt, and he's all indignant and chops them up. It's
Like
kind
you
of
do.
a character trait that is entirely lost in the film. Not like it's
got a chip on
necessary.
his shoulder.
He only calls someone Bub in the worst movie in the series, so which is another character trait from the comics.
Mm-hmm. Bub.
So
Boy.
boy,
Atreus. Boy. Maybe someday we'll play God of War or Dad of
Dad
Boy.
of boy.
Dead of boy.
And we can review it, but we'd have to get a PS4 for that.
Well, PS5 is coming out.
Yeah, we can wait till that
They'll be cheap
happens.
then.
Theoretically.
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 But yeah, I guess we do our transcendental analysis. Not that our analysis itself is necessarily transcendental, but using the transcendentals to make our analysis. Truth.
The truth of. Well, we did cover the kind of Wolverine his whole life rejected repentance,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's kind of, and so Wolverine was very much caught up in this shame, this pride, until he set that aside and sacrificed himself and redeemed himself and accepted his redemption, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's part of where the truth lies in that film, where it's there is no darkness too dark. There's no sin too grave that that you can't be redeemed from,
Mm-hmm.
and rejecting that is only
Prolonging it.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the major morals of the movie. Because in a lot of ways he's running from his past because he's the same people
Literally running from his
that
past.
gave him like his adamantium skeleton.
The people behind what created Laura are also the Weapon X guys that created him. That's
Mhm.
how they had his DNA to create a clone of his past self that he is now literally running from
Mm-hmm.
and has to literally fight. And it's only through his relationship with Laura, and she ends up firing the adamantium bullet meant to kill Wolverine, right? That Logan meant to kill himself. But what he does is he kind of uses it to kill his past self.
Mm-hmm.
She uses it to kill his past self.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kind of freeing him. She kind of frees him from that past version of himself in a way.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some good elements of truth in there, and goodness too. There's some very good moments in the movie.
Relationships between Logan and Laura and Charles.
I wouldn't say that
It's not-
most of the film that the relationship between Logan and Laura is good.
No,
No.
it's only really
It comes
toward
in at the end.
It comes in.
Logan
at the
is very
end.
reluctant to sort of accept her.
After he wakes up from Laura driving most of the way,
Yeah.
because this 9-year-old kid driving.
Well, like she was trained to be like this assassin or whatever.
Well, right, but
Well,
like
yeah,
you'd
but that
think
doesn't mean
a state
she-
patrol officer rolling
Would
by
notice.
is like, yes, perfectly normal 9-year-olds driving.
Yeah. I mean, they are kind of lax on pulling people over. No, not lax, but like they're a little chill in North Dakota when it comes to giving out tickets. But I don't know about that chill. It's like, oh, you got your farmer's permit? Okay, all right. Wait, there's not a farm here. But like, there's another good moment is like, so there's in the near future, they have like these self-driving semi trucks that cause basically this accident. And there's this family who has a trailer full of horses. Like the horses get out onto the freeway. And so Charles uses his telepathy ability to like get the horses
to calm
back
the horses.
Yeah, get them back in the trailer safely. So this family, out of gratitude, invites them to their home for dinner. And so they have sort of this nice meal and friendly conversation with this family. And it's like sort of a peaceful, joyful time.
Yeah, and Wolverine in all of his relationships is very dysfunctional, right?
Mm-hmm.
But slowly over the course of the film, that he starts to change for the better, to be more kind, more loving, more virtuous,
Mm-hmm.
and less we're a relationship out of necessity,
Mm-hmm.
right? It starts out the movie, him and Caliban are discussing matters, and Caliban's like, well, you just asked me you needed help, but nah, I can't.
You
do
won't
it
let me help
without-"
you.
Yeah, he won't let anyone help him, right?
Yep.
As the film goes on, he starts to let people help him and help other people.
Yep.
So that kind of growth of character is really good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Beauty. Movie's very well shot.
It is very well shot. It's interesting. The lighting in that film is very harsh. It's like
In a way, but it's also very,
They're
like,
very natural.
Yeah.
but it's kind of unflattering.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's lots of brown and brown.
Brown.
But like, it's very, yeah, it's not, I mean, towards the end, there's some kind of, there's some aesthetic looking countryside and stuff that's in the background,
That is
but
very much North Dakota.
yeah. Yeah. For the most part though, things are kind of bleak. For the majority of the film, there's not really a whole lot of special effects, really, for most superhero films these days. I mean, obviously, there's stuff, obviously, Hugh Jackman doesn't really have Wolverine claws that we know of.
But I mean,
Nor does he really eviscerate 50 people.
Right. But I mean, there's no, like, giant action set pieces, really, until the end.
and even then, that's just running through the forest and occasionally throwing a fireball over someone's shoulder.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's very gritty and, like, very practically shot.
Which really serves to emphasize the how personal the violence is almost.
Yeah.
How very close quarters it is.
Yeah.
How very, so
Hi, kids. Do you like violence?
so there is a. It is. Visually, it's like not particularly stand out. But it's also not bad.
I don't know.
It
It's
really serves the tone of the film really well.
from a cinematography standpoint, it's one of my favorite movies.
There's some great shots in there, and the music is actually really Western. There's like a lot of weird electric
When there is
guitar
music.
in there. The music is sparse, and when it's in the film, it serves to heighten the moment,
Right.
and doesn't really do much beyond that.
Right.
But it kind of has a very cowboy road trip vibe.
Mm-hmm. Which was kind of like what they were going for.
Yeah, don't be fooled. This isn't like a typical superhero film. It's a Western.
Yeah.
Like a modern, postmodern, postmodern Western or whatever.
Yeah. And then the Unity, I guess, as we come to that one.
Yeah.
Brown.
It's all brown.
It is very unified because it is all.
I mean, there's a lot of things that it's very obviously it's coherent, but there's a lot of things in the character of Wolverine that come to a head and reach their fulfillment and completion in this movie.
Right. And it is all established within the film, but there's also the extra context of all the other movies that's kind
helpful.
of come together, right? It's really, really cool stuff.
Mhm.
A neat thing about it is there's the main story about the road trip. But there's just a couple of subplots that are not explicitly told, really. They're very much background noise for the rest of the film. But if you're paying attention and looking for it, you can pick out the subtext about, it's Charles's fault the X-Men aren't a thing anymore.
Yep.
Or the Weapon X guys apparently have been genetically engineering corn to remove mutants.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That is just hinted and in the background at all times. You just don't know to look for it until the end when he says it, and you're like, wait,
And once
what?
you do discover
And then
it,
you watch it again, and it's like, it was all there the whole time. All the little news articles, all the little radio
driving by
things.
cornfields.
Driving by cornfields. And the big corn company buying up all the land and trying to buy the land of the other farmer guy they live with, that's all wrapped up in that.
Yep.
And you don't know it's wrapped up in that unless you're looking for it. And once you look for it, it's like, that was all there the whole time. It's a really well put together film because you get something a little bit new every time you watch it.
It does a lot of world building without trying. Well, not building, but like it's a world that feels very lived in and believable.
And there's more going on in this world than just three people's ride across America.
And it doesn't really directly try to like reveal that to you, but it's there if you want to find
look
it.
for it.
Yeah. So yeah, overall, good film.
I mean, it's a difficult watch. It's very very there's much to it. It's Wolverine eviscerating people. It's rated R. But it's really good. It is probably the single greatest piece of X-Men film media to ever be created.
Yeah. I mean, that's for some of those movies, it sets the bar pretty low, but this actually is quite an excellent film in a lot of regards. It's if you like character-driven action, it's good stuff.
And for a little more context, there's the Wolverine, the one where he goes to Japan and fights.
Also a pretty good movie.
Samurai. Also pretty good, and it's like kind of the spiritual prequel to this one because it's same director, same actors, and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 The other X-Men movies really kind of aren't worth bothering for the most part. The first X-Men film is fine for an early 2000s superhero movie.
That's I've only seen the first one,
Wolverine.
the Wolverine and Logan.
Days of Future Past is pretty fun.
Sure.
It's the one with Quicksilver running to time in a bottle.
Yeah.
And it's got Sentinels, and it's got Peter Dinklage as the guy that builds Sentinels.
Oh.
and it's got
Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage.
But yeah,
and that one is when and those the prequel, but also alternate timeline X-Men films, I guess,
kind
are
of
the ones
sorta
where,
ish.
they're the ones where Jennifer Lawrence plays Mystique, the blue shapeshifty lady, who inexplicably doesn't wear clothes for most of the time, and it's like, what the heck
why
are you up to?
Yeah,
Why, just even why? And also, it's not Gandalf that plays Magneto in
Michael
Days of Future Past.
Fassbender.
It's Michael
Fassbender.
Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, Michael Fassbender. Yeah.
Bender.
Michael Airbender.
Are we boned? That's the name of the robot in Futurama, isn't it?
Bender.
Yeah.
Bender. Yes, that was what he was talking about.
Cool.
That was his joke. We're explaining the joke.
This funny joke. Funny joke.
I have a joke for you.
Shout out to John for introducing us to
funny joke. And Game
Game
Grumps and all
Grumps,
that.
Joke Yoda. Yeah,
Yeah. Good stuff.
rather funny.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, mostly ladies, for listening to this podcast.
Actually not.
Well,
40%.
46.
oh, okay, never mind. That's not a majority. But
It's
nonetheless,
almost-
thank you for being here. We appreciate your listenership. Feel free to follow us at Palladian Paper or Palapapus on Facebook and Twitter. Yeah, you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. If that
Probably.
includes iTunes or Google Play or Spotify.
You can listen
If
to
you,
us
if you
on
want to
the
listen to
platform
us
you're
on
listening to us.
Castbox, you can do
We're on
that. now,
Castbox.
apparently.
Oh, radio. We're on Castbox too.
If there's
apparently.
something that you listen on and we're not on it, tell us about it.
Yeah.
We'll
And-
do it.
Except maybe SoundCloud. We tried.
Yeah,
that.
they don't like RSS feeds.
Nah, we ditched them. But yeah, feel free to email us at the palladianpapists@gmail.com.
Mhm.
Not the Palladium Papists.
Okay, palladianpapists@gmail.com without the
Without the.
If you type the, we can't guarantee who your
like
message. is.
papish, but without the Yeah. Anything else we need to talk about? Like, shoot us a comment. Are there comment sections on any of these platforms?
And do we look at them?
There are reviews on
Leave us a
iTunes.
review. Yeah,
Ooh,
on Google,
reviews.
especially if you leave us a review. That's very helpful.
iTunes especially.
Yes.
Also, because nobody listens to podcasts on Google.
Yeah. So on iTunes, leave us a review if you feel so inclined. And
That
be
would
greatly
nice.
appreciated.
Yeah.
We've been the Palladium. Excuse me, the Palladium Papists.
Palladian, excuse me.
We've been the Palladium
Papist
Papists. Will we ever talk about Rick and Morty?
Nope.
Yeah, probably not.
That would entail having to watch Rick and Morty.
Speak for yourself. But yeah.
There's a lot of it. And I don't wanna sit down and do it.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I don't have anyone to watch
This is true. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you next week. Stay safe, stay healthy. And we'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye.